Greetings, friends. I have good news for you. We have a bonus to get ready for Sunday. Turns out it's been a little while since I preached, and so I needed to practice a little bit. And also turns out writing a 7-minute sermon for drive-in worship is not that easy. So here we go. I got 2 sermons this week, so I'm going to split one in half. I'm going to split my sermon in half. Share one as a devotion between now and Sunday, and share the good stuff with you on Sunday. So here we go. The devotion covers the story for this week in 1 Kings, right? We'll read it aloud at worship on Sunday. And it goes well with this, with the questions we've been asking and answering and hearing God ask us over the last couple weeks. What's growing? What's nourishing you and sustaining you? What's getting you through? And this week, God asks Elijah, what are you up to? And so I'll give you a little bit of the backstory while you're holding on to that question and thinking about how you might answer it. What are you up to? So before the story starts, Elijah has been kind of part of and party to 2 big and intense miracles. God calls Elijah and says, Elijah, go to the king. Tell him that there's going to be a famine. Right? And so Elijah does that, and a drought comes over the land because of the injustice, the rancor, the corruption within the leadership in the country, right? And so then, for 3 years, there is a drought and famine, and Elijah lives in the desert and is fed by God. Ravens bring him bread. God leads Elijah to a widow's house in a foreign land. And in that process, Elijah brings her son back to life. The meager supply of oil and flour that she has miraculously keep yielding food for all 3 people. And these are just the ones that we hear about from the writer. And so over this 3 years, Elijah continues to live in the desert and learn to trust God. And so then at the end of the 3 years, God says to Elijah, it's time to go back to tell the king that we're going to end the drought and the famine and that rain is coming. And so Elijah returns to the king and says, hey, the famine's over. The drought is over. I'm here to demonstrate God's power and goodness. And so they set up a prophet battle. Elijah faces off with the king's prophets. And so they both set these large sacrificial fires and sacrifice a cow on the fire. And then they pray. And, of course, the winner is the one who God sends rain and puts out the fire. And so, spoiler, Elijah wins. Right? God sends rain and puts out Elijah's fire. Elijah maybe gloats a little bit. He has the king's prophets murdered. And, of course, that doesn't, winning and murdering the prophets doesn't get Elijah any bonus points. In fact, it makes him a wanted man. So they asked to flee for his life. And so he's hiding in a cave. And that's where our reading starts today. Elijah is sure that soldiers are going to pop up at any minute and kill him. And so, instead, God appears and says, what are you doing here, Elijah? Or in other words, what are you up to? And Elijah says a bunch of things, but he mostly says, God, bad stuff is happening and I'm freaking out. And God probably chuckles a little bit because to God it's a little silly to freak out because God remembers how many times God has saved Elijah. And God knows what's going to happen next. And so God says, sorry you're freaking out. Go out on the mountain and I'll give you a sign to comfort you. And so Elijah listens. He goes out and God has some miracles prepared for him. Some more. Some miraculous storms appear, some fires, some earthquakes, mountains are split. The wind blows so hard it picks up rocks. And we're all thinking, I'm glad that these things haven't happened yet in 2020. But then in the main event, God's presence comes over Elijah. And it's in none of those things, those previous great earth-shattering events. In fact, God's presence is a small, quiet voice. And after all these literally earth-shaking moments, the quiet, loving presence of God comes over Elijah. And that's all. That's it. None of the other stuff matters. Being hunted by soldiers, these intense, earth-shattering miracles. Everything else before this is meaningless. Coming near to God is all that matters for Elijah. And so then God goes ahead and tells Elijah what the next chapter is going to be like and who he needs to talk to and connect with and what God is hoping that he will be up to. And so for all the real worry and fear and miracles, Elijah gets busy and does these last things. And then a fiery chariot descends from heaven and it's pulled by fiery horses. Elijah gets in and is carried to heaven alive. And so there's the story of Elijah, and we've had a chance to reflect on a little bit how a person's life of faith may have ups and downs, and how God may pop up and ask that question. What are you doing here? What are you up to? And here we are in a time when miracles are happening, when we may be freaking out a little bit, in the ups and downs, the hard parts and the easy parts of life. And so we hear God ask that question today. What are you up to? And there probably isn't a right answer. You might be hiding in a cave. You might be trying to help your neighbor. You might just be getting by. Maybe you're working for justice, trying to stay busy, looking for the next step, trying to keep up with the Holy Spirit, stopping to catch your breath, watching for something sacred, remembering God's promises, waiting for a way to open. Maybe you're caring for the vulnerable. These are maybe just a few of the things you could be up to. And as always, it's probably most important just to ask these questions today. What are you up to? What am I up to? You might not have an answer. You might have 12 answers. I think the important part is to ask the question and just to be ready to keep growing and going. To be ready to ask for help if you know you need it. To be open to what God might be doing. What are you up to? I'll share some of the things I've been up to in the comments on Facebook. But friends, may we simply be able to know where we are, how we're doing, and be ready to do the next right thing. If the last 5 months have taught us anything, it is that God is busy. God is near. And when God's presence comes over us, we're going to be ready to keep on going and growing and nurturing this little gift of faith we've been given to nurture and share with this world. May it be so.